Welcome to logisticsales.com, where today we kick off a new segment called Mastering Phone Sales. So stick around and let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of logisticsales.com. Like we talked about, we are opening a brand new segment today, talking about mastering phone sales. I'm your host, as always, Dean, and with me is my co-host, Damon.
Hello.
And Gail.
Hi, guys. Happy to be here.
So again, today we're going to be diving into one of the most important skills in mastering phone sales, and that's effective communication. So whether you're new to the game or you're looking to refine your skills, we're going to dive into some really important strategies to help you get to your ultimate goal. So again, to kick off, let's talk about simplicity and clarity, Damon.
For sure, yeah. So we talk about like the 3 C's of communication, which is clarity, conciseness, and consistency. And so these are pretty much the effective building blocks of clear communication is what we're trying to do and help customers understand us appropriately and make it easy for them to really understand what we're saying. So let's start with clarity, right? And clarity is just more about emphasizing that clear, straightforward communication and making sure that when we're talking to somebody, it's clear on what we're trying to say. So a lot of times what we notice in cold calls is that when people are calling the customer has a real hard time on trying to understand how they can help you, where they can direct you to. And a lot of that time it's because we're not being clear in the communication that we're doing. And so that's where conciseness comes into play too, where you really want to be exact about what you want. So if you're asking for somebody, just ask for a name right away. If you're asking for a department, sometimes they're going to ask you, okay, is there something that we can help you with in that department? So if you don't have an answer for that, then again, the customer gets confused as to what you really want. So I know sometimes when we're looking for logistics people, sometimes people are asking for the receiving warehouse and or the warehouse. And when they ask for the warehouse, the customer's like, well, do you have an appointment? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to deliver something, pick up something? And in reality, what the salesperson is really trying to do is just talk to somebody in the logistics department. But then they panic. And when they go, okay, we're not going to pick up or we're not delivering here, we're actually looking to speak to somebody in your logistics department, then now the customer gets really confused. So it's about having a clear, concise message from the get-go and saying, hey, I'm looking to speak to somebody and see, the type of organization that is. Understand who you're speaking to as the person, and then try to talk to them in those type of words where they can really understand and help direct you to the right person, because understanding who that first person is of contact is going to allow you to be able to communicate with them in a way that they can help you. And that's all their job really is to just help you move to the next step. And then once you get to the right person, again, clear, concise message about what it is that you're actually looking to do and what it is that you want, because that's the same thing that they're asking is like, who are you? What do you want from me? Usually number 3 is, what's it going to cost me? But usually the first 2 is where people get stuck. Who are you? So being clear about who you are and the purpose of your call. And so using simple language is important, not to oversell yourself in that situation where you use big words, but in a way that everyone can understand. And typically what we say is, talk to someone like they're your best friend, or talk to someone like they're your child. And, if your friends can't really understand what you're saying, then probably that person that you're calling or contacting probably doesn't understand either. And so this is, again, if you're noticing that you're having struggles on communication and getting through to the next step, then you want to look at the way that you're messaging and the way that you're talking to somebody and the words that you're using. Go for it, Gil.
One really easy way that you can actually kind of test to see if your sales pitch or your introduction is really kind of getting that message across is just to practice it. You mentioned, talking to a child or to a friend. So that's a really great way to do that. If you actually go and explain to somebody who's not a customer, somebody who's unrelated to you work-wise, what you do for business, and ask if they understand and can repeat it back to you. and see if they really comprehend it. And that'll give you a good idea if you are being clear enough in your explanation as to why you're calling. Because like Damon said, that's the only reason people are going to want to know why you're on the phone is who you are and why you're calling them. So if you can't answer that quickly enough and clearly enough, there's going to cause confusion. So try explaining it to a friend that has nothing to do with the business that you're in and see if they understand it. And if not, you might have to revamp your sales pitch to just make it a little bit more clear and concise.
Thanks, Gail. And then the third one is like staying concise. And so when speaking to somebody, it's important to kind of repeat the same messaging so they really understand what you're saying. Sometimes they may have missed a word. So sometimes what I try to do is try to say the same phrase, but try to word it differently. But it's really saying the same thing over and over again. And you'll notice this in law enforcement. In law enforcement, they'll repeat the same message, come out with your hands up. And, they say hands up, right? They'll repeat certain words. And that just means you're staying concise. You're being very concise as to the messaging you're trying to give somebody in order for them to be able to respond or even hear you. And sometimes people just don't hear what you're saying. So repeating sometimes the same words will make it easier. Rephrasing it a little bit different so it's in words that somebody can understand helps in that conversation.
Another really good thing that you can do as well is actually take your sales pitch or your introduction and type it out and put it into ChatGPT or some sort of AI software and ask it, is this simple and clear for somebody to understand if they have no industry experience or something along those lines, and see what the AI comes back with you, because it'll give you some really good techniques and different tips and tricks in order to simplify your messaging to make it more clear and easier to digest for the customer.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think even when you're giving those prompts with Chat GPT, you could even, explain that you're trying to deliver a message to somebody who's, English may be their second language, and see what it gives you. And it's really good to see what comes back, because sometimes you never know who picks up the phone on the other end. And sometimes it may be somebody who is using English as a second language, and they need to make sure, A, they understand what you're calling for so they can get you to the person you're trying to get in touch with too. So it's super great skill, and technology is so great nowadays to be able to help us get to where we need to go with all of that. But moving on.
I was gonna say one more thing to keep in mind is keep it short. The more long-winded you try to make a conversation, the more chances you have to lose somebody along that conversation. And so ChatGPT and all these AI tools can also help you shorten it and make it concise. And again, instead of those long-winded answers, you'll notice that people respond better when there's shorter commands, and people will respond better when there's shorter emails that are easy to respond to. So same thing when we are communicating with somebody, even with our words, the more concise our words are and the more clear that our words are, the more chances you have of somebody engaging with you in a conversation and not getting frustrated to hang up the phone.
Yeah, and you mentioned communicating, and part of communication, it's a two-way street. And I think the second part and next topic that Gail's going to touch on is after you're speaking to them, you want to make sure you're listening actively.
Thanks, Dean. And I actually kind of want to tie this into what Damon was kind of talking about as well here. When it comes to having that conversation with a customer, there's so many opportunities to lose them in that conversation if you're not speaking their language. And so this is where active listening really does come into play, because it's being able to more so step back from that actual conversation and actually listen to what the person on the other end of the line is telling you, both directly and indirectly, to start painting a picture of what their potential service needs are going to look like and where you potentially fit into that mix to meet their service requirements. So describing what is actually active listening, it's being able to listen to them throughout the conversation and interpret what they're saying, both the literal words that they're saying, but also using the subcontext in order to fill in the gaps. So for example, if they're saying that they're having issues with their products being received by the receiver in not great quality, let's say it's a produce company, so that would tell me, okay, they're having issues with either on-time pickups or on-time deliveries or their transit times. So that gives me a good range of what I would then use in my conversation moving forward in order to continue that conversation and hopefully continue to push it towards eventually a sale.
And that's true. A lot of times customers are giving you a lot of their solutions, and customers are giving you hints as to how they operate and what they're looking for. And so that listening component becomes very important. Another reason why we teach the listening component too is because a lot of times in the beginning of a conversation, if you're not listening to the feeling of what your customer may be going through, or if he's irritated, then you don't want to lead it to more frustration for that customer. Our job as a sales rep is to make it easy for that customer to communicate with. We have to be receptive to what they're saying and listen to what they're saying. And if we do, what happens as a reward of that is that they'll want to have more conversations with us, and they'll understand that we actually respect them. And that's what we want to create, is that relationship where the customer feels respected, they feel listened to, they know that you're going to actually follow through with whatever you're saying because you're actively listening and repeating things back to them. They'll build that trust with you a little bit better.
Yeah. So basically, like, what you're looking for out of the conversation is you're looking for the content, the subcontext, as well as the tonality of that conversation. And then using those tools, you'll be able to reflect that back to the customer in a way that's going to best effectively hit them in the way it will most impact them. So it's really a great tool. So some techniques for actively listening are going to be, number one is going to be paraphrasing. This is the number one trick that we teach all of our sales reps because it is the most effective, and that's repeating what your customer says back to them. So for example, let's just say a customer says, I'm having issues with my products being received in good condition. That's exactly what you're going to repeat back to them. You're going to say, hey, so from what I understand from our conversation, you're having problems having your products received in good condition. Is this an issue? And this is where you would open up that area for you to continue to ask clarifying questions. And by using the exact verbiage that they use, it's almost a reflection of their own struggles or their own issue, because you're using that same lingo, that same terminology that's going to resonate most with them. The second one here is, we kind of talked on it a little bit, and it's asking those clarifying questions. So once you've broken through and you started that initial dialogue and you have started to read through the context and read between the lines, you're going to start asking directed and pointed questions to try and fill some of the gaps in what areas you haven't been able to get your answers for. So if there are specific things that you need to know in order to qualify a customer, whether or not they're a good fit for your business, those are the questions that you're going to continue to follow up with as they properly fit into the conversation. Again, you always want to be respectful and mindful of the customer's time. If they sound like they want to get off the line, maybe it's not the right time for a clarifying question. So definitely assess it, but use those opportunities to dig a little deeper once you've built that rapport.
And Gail, what I notice a lot of times is, as a beginner sales rep, it's important to breathe and take your time in that conversation. A lot of times people are so into their script that they're talking, and they're really missing the other side, which is the most important side, is listening to that customer and being able to understand where they're coming from. So it's important that you have a script and you know what you're going to say, but don't overspeak it when you know, or don't overspeak it to a point where you can't listen to that customer. Always keep that in mind and say, okay, if I'm getting too nervous, let me just breathe a little bit so I can actually have that conversation and still be able to listen at the same time.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And when you make that call, so many people want to get that message across. But once you get your customer or prospect speaking, actually you're calling to find out as much as you can from that prospect. So if you stop and listen, they're actually going to tell you everything that you're calling to find out about anyway. So it's really important to just, you were talking about just actively listening, and it's really just as important as the message that you're calling to deliver in the first place.
Exactly. And I think it's one of those things that it does take practice. You're not going to pick up your first sales call and be able to properly active listen the entire way through and build that dialogue and have that perfect conversation your first sales call. It isn't feasible. You have to get the practice in order to become an expert at doing sales. So don't take it too seriously. Just continue to push yourself to listen a little bit deeper with every conversation that you have. But it is pretty common for our sales reps, when they come in those first 4 or 5 conversations, a lot of the time they're already getting the information from the customer, but they're so focused on delivering their pitch, they forget to listen at all and don't hear the answers to the questions that they haven't even asked. So keep that in mind as you start your sales journey. Don't be too hard on yourself. If you do slip up and aren't properly listening a call or two, just make sure you redirect yourself and get yourself back on track for the next one. And the best way to do this is going to be by avoiding distractions. You want to be able to sit down and do your sales calls in a quiet space where your environment is optimal for concentrating and dialing in to just being present for those conversations. So silence those notifications, turn off the volume on your phone, and just dig in and get it done. The last thing that I would suggest for everyone as well is go practice. If you're not comfortable with doing it directly with a customer on the line, go pick 5 or 6 friends and say, hey, I want to practice my sales pitch on you. Can I pretend to have a conversation with you? Can we have a dialogue and go back and forth? And tell me what you think and tell me how I can improve this dialogue for when I actually am starting to do sales calls.
Yeah, and even better is practicing with your coworkers. If you have coworkers, practice with your coworkers. If you have a supervisor, practice with your supervisor. But anytime you can get that practice, take it.
Yeah. And before I touch on tone and pacing, at the end of the day, it's all about building rapport and trust. And when you're speaking to another individual, whether it's a prospect or a spouse or a friend or a family member, when you allow the other person to speak, you're actually subconsciously giving them the opportunity to gain more and more trust in you because they're disclosing more and more information to you. So it's a proven fact. So even if you're reaching out for that sales call, and we're talking about effective communication while mastering, phone sales through this segment, but it's the listening can't be highlighted enough, especially when you want to build that rapport and trust with any prospect that you're calling. So I'm going to touch on tonality and pacing and really finding the right tone. So when you make that call, you want to make sure you have the right tone to the listener. Sometimes I talk about the pacing too. You want to be friendly. You want to be welcoming to make them feel comfortable to be able to have that conversation with you, and you're not pushy where they're like, they're kind of like, what are you calling for? And then how quick can I get off the phone? And at the same time, you want to be professional but casual. And we have always spoken about and taught our sales reps relational sales techniques and not transactional, where if you're really direct and to the point to where you're almost forceful to get your point across, you get more into that transactional relationship, which could be a little bit harder to be trusted sometimes. But at the same time, Gail was talking about active listening, and sometimes you get someone on the other line who is speaking really, really fast. And, a skill that I use sometimes, all the time when I pick up the phone speaking to somebody, is I try and match their pace. So if they're a fast talker, maybe they want to hear everything just as quickly. And if it's somebody who's speaking slow, we mentioned some individuals use English as their second language, so they're taking their time to speak. And just in doing so, they probably are going to take their time listening. So you want to slow down your pace of your message and allow the listener to hear the words that you're speaking, which is really important. And that's the adjusting speech pace that we're talking about. Really, it's that important to be able to do. And again, I mentioned being warm but professional. You want to encourage a balance of both. Really, you want to be somebody that is friendly, somebody they enjoy talking to, so they remember they want to talk to you again. And if they start telling you some of their problems and you're able to address them, you're starting off on the right foot right away because you made the call, you listened to who answered the phone, how they were speaking, and really you listening in the same fashion. So really good tips to have when you make those calls. And Gail, I see you got...
Yeah, I kind of had like a concept scenario that I wanted to just share with the viewers here today. One thing that's really common for a lot of us is getting, scammer calls or telemarketer calls, sales calls, just in our day-to-day lives, not even in our work lives. And how often have you picked up the phone and it's been some Shooter McGavin, smooth talking guy who speaks really fast and is very, very pushy with the sale. And it kind of just is like, I'm not interested, man. And click, hang up the phone. Yeah. And then on the comparison, you have the person that you've picked up the phone for before who's trying to sell you something and are so monotone and so dreary because it sounds like they literally don't want to be doing this job. They don't want to be calling you. And your same kind of reaction is, why are you calling me? I'm not interested. Click. But every once in a while, you get that person on the phone who's trying to sell you something, but just has that warm, bubbly personality where they match your energy. They just connect with you, and you're like, okay, even if you're not really wanting to buy the product, you're willing to have that conversation just to see where it goes. And that's that moment that you're looking for when it comes to those conversations. You're looking for that aha moment where the person says, I don't know what you really want from me, and I'm not sure if I'm going to buy from you, but I want to continue this conversation and find out more.
Yeah, being likable is key. I mean, I've been at a craft fair, or just gone to an open market, and you meet a farmer that's selling some of their vegetables and produce, and you're like, they're so likable that you just want to support and buy from them because their message was perfect and they related, and that's what you want to do with the individual end of the line. And when you're on the phone, it's a little more difficult than when you're in person, because you can't see the physical language that their body is exuding when you're speaking to them. But if you're listening and delivering your message, try speaking on the phone to your spouse or to your partner or to whoever with a smile on your face. The message and the sound of your voice while you're smiling is a lot different than that person on the phone who's dreary and they don't feel good and they can't wait to get off the phone and go home after their 9 to 5 is over. So really good tip to try. You can try it in a mirror if you want, if you're uncomfortable to do it with other people. And then when you get comfortable, try recording it and listening to it. And after listening to it, do I sound like Shooter McGavin and I'm trying to sell, something, or am I trying to build a relationship, which is, more important in my eyes, because once you build that relationship, it's one and the same, because that partnership starts with the relationship, and then if they trust you, then they want to do business with you.
And when it comes to tone and pacing, one thing I know the way that I want to be sold to is, again, match my pace. If I'm short for time, be quick with me. Don't stick to a long sales script, because you're going to lose me in that process. I don't have 5 minutes to spend on the phone. And it's important that you listen to what I'm saying. If you're not listening to what I'm saying and you're sticking to a script, I'm most likely not going to talk to you. And so just understanding what a busy executive goes through. And again, in the beginning, it may just be a quick qualifier, a couple questions that the person on the other side of the phone is trying to ask you. And if you're still trying to, stick to your certain pace, or still trying to do it on the way that you want to do it, you probably already lost the sale. And so that's where tone and pacing becomes important. And it comes along with empathy. So if you understand and you can feel what the person is going through on the other side, and you can feel, are they getting frustrated, or what are they telling me to do? Have empathy towards what they want as their experience, because that experience is what's going to lead to that next conversation. And if you leave them in a bad experience, they're probably not going to have that conversation. But if you leave them with a smile on their face, and you make them feel relieved that, oh, good, that person listened to me and they weren't trying to push their agenda. So you're more likely to have a better next conversation. And that's what we want you to go for. It's not always about the initial conversation, but go for the second one too.
Yeah. And put yourself in this situation. We've all been there. Put yourself in the situation where you knew somebody was reading to you. You answer the phone and they're not even... The second you answer, they just start going from their script, and you may try and say something, but they're so focused on getting that through. There's no connection there, and they've lost the listener in their pitch when they do that. And it's not, you want that personal approach to make that connection so it works.
Yeah, I think a really good question to ask yourself after you do a sales pitch or you do a cold call is reflect back on the conversation. Say, if I had been the receiver of that call and I was listening to my own sales pitch from somebody else, obviously not from yourself, would it have convinced me to continue the conversation and or buy? If the answer is no, you might want to re-hit the drawing board and see where you can tweak it a little bit, where you would reactionally say, yes, I would have continued that conversation with this salesperson because the conversation was strong enough.
Love it.
Yeah. And so the next topic that we have is building trust with transparency. And that starts with being honest with your clients. So what they talk about is, how do you be your genuine self? And that starts with not overselling yourself in the first place. When I'm trying to receive a sales call, the person that says that I can do everything, I'm usually a little bit skeptical about, how come everything that I kind of lean towards, they're like, yes, 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 and yes, 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 yes. But I want to hear the information after that, right? And usually I'll test that person, oh, okay, you say you could do this. Okay, give me an example. And so usually that's where people will get stuck. They can't really give examples of it. So I'm always like, okay, well, as a sales rep, only promise the things that you know you can deliver on. Don't be the yes, 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 I could do everything, and then have to retract that statement afterwards. Always use statements that are honest, that you know that you can fulfill to that customer, and it's just going to help build that trust. The other thing is, like, if you don't know the answer to something, it's called owning the gaps. It's like making sure that if there's a question that you don't really understand, that you need to get information for, let the customer know. Say, hey, you know what? That's a great question. I can get you an answer for that in the next couple hours. Or, you know, if you hold on a moment, let me see if I can get that for you. But there's so many ways that you can kind of get that information for that person, and own it as well. Whereas, hey, let me take care of you. Take the accountability. And that's where it kind of starts with, when the customer knows that you can take accountability and get them what they need, even if you don't have it at the time. And especially if you're a new sales rep, you won't have all the answers. But as you're going through that training, make sure you always understand that you're the person that's making that direct contact with that client, and they want to hear those answers from you. If you're not giving those answers, they're probably going to look somewhere else to get those answers. Gail, you want to say something? Or
Yeah, I had a previous experience at a different company where we were all sitting in a boardroom at a meeting, and the boss came in and asked a question. I won't go into what the question is, but basically it was something that nobody should have had the answer to. And everybody at the table tried to give an answer to that question, except for one person who honestly said, I am not sure of what the answer is, but I can find out. And in that meeting, the boss, the owner, he actually ended up giving that person a promotion and a raise to a manager role, because he said, out of everyone in the room, the only person that I truly believe I can rely on was that person, because they owned the knowledge gap. Mm-hmm. They said, I don't have that information, but I can figure it out. Instead of trying to just over explain or give false information, or just trying to give a random answer that's going to make somebody feel good that they got something in return. It's better to provide actionable intel, details, whatever it is, that's going to actually provide solutions. If you're just providing answers for the sake of providing answers, you're not helping anyone.
I like to call that the dad answer too. Sometimes if your kid asks you a question, you don't know the answer, but you try and explain something that sounds good in your mind and has nothing to do with what really is true. And if you do that to a customer and they believe something you're saying that you really don't know, and you put them in a situation, you're actually putting them in a situation with their supervisors that's not going to make them look good. So it's better to say, I don't know and I'll let you know, because if they're asking, they don't know. And if you find out before they do and you give it to them, they're still going to look like a rock star with their supervisors, and they go to them and say, hey, what you had asked about, here's an answer I heard from Damon or Gail, and this is how it works. And again, it makes them look good, and you're being that troubleshooter for them.
And what happens in a lot of cultures, and what we try to teach our sales reps, is when you're building that relationship, if you're trying to speak to a decision maker, they want to speak to a decision maker as well. It's at a parallel. They want to speak to somebody on equal terms. And they say, hey, well, if you want answers from me, I want those answers from you. You could only ask for what you can give. And so it's a two-way streak. It's both ways. If we want answers from them, then we got to provide them answers as well. If we want information from them, then we're going to have to give them information as well. It's a give and take. And that's what keeps the balance in that relationship. And, you know, the third way that we talk about building trust with transparency is setting realistic expectations. And sometimes, a lot of times, sales reps will over-promise, under-deliver. We've all heard that term. And what you want to do is let people know realistically, hey, what's the timeline for me to get my project done? What's the timeline of me to expect this product or service from you? And setting those realistic expectations from the get-go, the customer's going to appreciate the honesty, because now they know what to expect down the road. Instead of trying to hustle and close a deal and then, you know, not deliver on what you promised, or having even the customer having expectations that aren't really addressed. But the customer is going to have a bad experience if he's feeling that expectation that wasn't really spoken about. And we see this a lot of times with different trade companies. You know, I remember a couple of examples where, you know, someone wanted to install carpet, and they didn't talk about the transitions that happen from like the carpet to the tile. And it's like, well, oh, that's an extra cost, and this is an extra cost. Or in transportation, we see that too, where, you know, if we're delivering somewhere and there's delays, well, who's responsible for the cost of the delays? If there's people waiting at a warehouse and the products aren't received, and there was deliveries that had to be done, and now there's incurred costs, well, who takes care of that? So setting realistic expectations from the beginning helps create that transparency with that customer. And then they realize that, hey, you know what? I'm actually talking to an expert that's addressing these issues with me ahead of time. And again, it's a way for sales reps to kind of set themselves apart. And if you have those conversations with your customers from the get-go, it's a great way to show them who you are and the experience that you have. And they're more likely to trust you right away as well.
Yeah, and it's a little repetitive, but I think it's important enough to say again is we keep talking about building trust, and it's okay to not have the answer. And if you listen enough and you know what their problem is, it's also okay if you're really in it to help them and make their job easier, which is at the end of the day what you want to do for a true partner that you're working with. If it's somebody else that you refer them to that you know can help them because you can't, they're going to remember that. And if they've had enough conversations with you and they know enough about your product or your business, they'll know, well, they helped me with this and they couldn't even deliver on this part of it, or this product didn't help me with that, but I know that you do this. They're going to come back to you because you're that much more reliable than the person say, oh, I can do that and I can do this, and then they give it to you, and truthfully you end up not, or the product doesn't deliver what they were looking for. So again, really important to actually be in it, to help them, and they'll remember that.
Yeah, and we talk about this in friendship. So imagine you're helping your best friend with a product or service. How would you want to treat that best friend? And the question comes, and we kind of talked about this today, is, if your best friend is on the line and that relationship is on the line because of how you're speaking to them and how you're being honest with them and telling them realistic expectations, that relationship's probably gonna decide whether it's going to continue or not, because based on your honesty, right? Based on if you're just trying to pull a fast one versus actually building a relationship. And people, just like how we would deal with our kids or family members or best friends, we want to be as clear in our communication as possible to build that relationship, to keep it going long term, right? We don't want to just have a one transaction and then have it fall apart.
Exactly. Now, before we start signing off here for the day, we do have a worksheet for you. So go ahead and open that up. It's actually a fairly short one for you today. There's only 4 questions, all about effective communication. So go through it and see how you can apply some of the techniques and tips that you learned here today, and how you'd apply them to your own sales, and go from there.
Awesome. So thank you for joining us today. As you can see, mastering phone sales is a journey, but it all starts with effective communication. So by listening attentively and matching your tone and being clear and transparent, you'll be well on your way to building long-lasting, trusted partnerships. So we hope you enjoyed the episode, and we look forward to seeing you next time, where we're going to be exploring how to establish the pitch. So remember, practice makes perfect. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.